Welcome. I'm Sebastian Mahfood, and you're listening to WCAT Radio, the on-air wing of En Route Books and Media, bringing you the dulcet sounds of Catholic wisdom.
This is an encore presentation of Faith and Sports. Tune in to hear Faith and Sport live Monday afternoons from 2 to 3 right here on Carolina Catholic Radio Charlotte, AM 1270. Well, a good Monday afternoon to you. It's that time again, your favorite time on the radio on Carolina Catholic Radio. It's Faith and Sport. You're listening to the Carolina Catholic Radio Network, AM 1270 WCGC. We're also streaming live online at carolinacatholicradio.org, also on the Carolina Catholic Radio app. And your host for Faith and Sport, the one, the only. That's right, he's here live in the studio. So let's get the show started with Faith and Sports with your host, John
Acquaviva. Thank you, folks. Thank you, Chris. Hey, thanks for joining us today, folks. However, wherever you're listening to us, this is Faith and Sport. I'm Dr. John Acquaviva. My day job is I'm an exercise physiologist. Teach exercise science-related courses at Wingate University in Wingate, North Carolina, just about a half hour east of here. But you've tuned into Carolina Catholic Radio. Thank you for doing that. Thank you for supporting this radio station. Thank you for supporting the show. In fact, speaking of supporting the show, big thanks to David Anderson and all the folks at Brand RPM, who are the official sponsors of the show. Get your brand and gear. We have access to over 1 million products, a lot of them related to sportswear. Check them out at brandrpm.com. Folks, here's what we're going to do today. We're going to do the hit and miss, as we always do. And this time, and again, we're going to bring on certified soccer coach and longtime friend of mine, Carlos Herrera. He and I have a hoot, and so I'm always thankful that he's willing to join the show for the hit and miss. And then we'll jump in right to our major guest, or our main guest, Tommy Fee, Faith and Sports college football analyst. He'll join us in a few minutes, shortly after I get off the phone with the hit and miss with Carlos. We'll do weekend headlines. We have the quick Q&A with Dr. A. Where Chris sends me a couple questions and he can see if I can answer them. Hopefully they're just true and false today, Chris. That way I don't have to really think of any great answers. And then we have our Catholic quote of the week. This one comes from JP2, so stay tuned for that. And that's toward the end of our show. But let's first do our hit and miss with certified soccer coach Carlos Herrera. Carlos, you on the line there?
Yes, I am, Dr. Acquaviva. How are you?
Carlos, I appreciate the heck out of it because you are so busy, but you have joined us so many times for this aspect of the show, so thank you for doing it.
I'd love to be a part of it, John.
Okay, man, so you're first, as always. Do you have a hit or miss in the world of sport from this past weekend or just the past few days?
I have a hit.
Okay.
One of them is this weekend scripture. If your faith was a mustard seed, size of a mustard seed,
yep,
you could do many things.
Yep.
Move mountains,
yep,
etc.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's a lot of baseball teams that are going to have some faith because they're going against some pretty big opponents for today's games. There could be a lot of eliminations at the end of today.
That's right. In fact,
so it's a big sports weekend. You have
Absolutely.
College, you have baseball, you have a lot going on in the NFL as well. But that, to me, in the middle of this sports season, is the couple teams that might get knocked out.
Oh, yeah.
Don't win.
And you consider yourself a Nats fan, correct? And they're one of the teams.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, and they're one of the teams. There's 4 teams, as we'll talk about in our weekend headlines with a little more detail. But, yeah, there's 4 series going on right now, the Cards and the Braves, the Twins and the Yankees, the Astros and the Rays, and the Nats and the Dodgers. And all 4 those tournaments or those series can end today. Yeah, but I don't think the Nats are going to end. They have Scherzer going for them. They're playing at home. I don't think their season's going to come to an end. Of course,
there's a lot of doubt about Scherzer, however, that he hasn't been great in the postseason the last couple of years.
This is true.
The one that they've been counting on has been Strasburg, and they're hoping they can get to the next game so that he can start.
Yeah, that's right. Now, Carlos, are you disappointed or happy about the firing of Jay Gruden of your beloved Washington Redskins?
Which team? The who?
Carlos, is this as bad a stretch of seasons that you can remember since you were a kid?
Well, I mean, I hate to beat the sort of this old horse, but ever since the team sort of moved to Ralph John, Maryland, which they came up with that name based on the previous owner's two sons. I think it was Ralph and John, so they called it Ralph John. But it's been abysmal, and it's just, people just don't really care now. They don't just get very angry. I stopped watching it because I just would just get so angry. And it's like a circus around here.
Yeah.
When it comes to this team.
A lot of people don't know of outside of the District of Columbia, Maryland, Virginia are all part of that because a lot of their fan base comes from that. But how big of a commodity were season tickets 20 years ago, Carlos? You remember this, right?
Oh, there was a waiting list that was something like several tens of thousands deep.
That's right.
And there's no longer a waiting list. As a matter of fact, they're not selling enough tickets to cover the home games.
Boy, how things have turned around just in like a decade. It's just amazing. And a lot of people, they agree with you. And this is terrible because, this show isn't really to belittle anybody or any organization in particular. But boy,
it's okay with the Redskins.
That's right. Dan Snyder. But also, we like to tell the truth on the show. Dan Snyder has totally turned around that organization into a winning organization, to an organization that people wanted to be affiliated with. People wanted to go see. They watched him on TV. I know. And right now you're going, John, what are you doing to me, man? I came on the show in a good mood.
Yeah, I went with the winner. I guess I could have gone with the loser of the week, which I would have probably picked the Redskins.
Well, actually, they might be a winner now because who knows? Maybe they'll turn things around. But I think with Dan Snyder at the helm, brother, I don't think they're going to head anywhere.
Yeah, there's a lot wrong with there. But this weekend is going to be the Tuna Bowl. The two losing teams will be battling it out in Miami, the Dolphins and the Redskins, for who will be the biggest loser next Sunday.
Oh, man, that means one team after next week will go 0-6. Yeah. Well, listen, let's move on to my hit or miss. Mine is a miss. And, of course, Carlos, last week I told you, hey, let me tell you what my miss is going to be, and we'll come back to it later on this show. But it was so funny because it was about that guy who told Mike Minor, a Major League pitcher, who told his first baseman not to catch a foul ball so he could strike out the next batter so he could get to 200 strikeouts, which in his 12-year career he has never done. And I remember you said, do you remember what you said when I told you that it was my miss?
Yeah, I said,
it's not that big of a deal.
Big of a deal, I think is what I said.
Okay, so you have to stay tuned for the second half of the show, buddy, because I'm going to talk about that to a much greater extent. But no, I do have a legit miss. It's the NCAA and in particular the NFL. They both claim, Carlos, to have great concern over the concussion issue, right? People are getting concussed on a regular basis. There's the CTE issue, but yet they do very little to change the physical aspect of the game. And they've changed the helmet. They've made some rules as far as if people are targeting somebody, they can be removed from the game. But the root of the issue, the root of the concussion problem is poor and or violent tackling. And in the sport, not only that you and I played together, but the great sport of rugby is what allowed you and I to meet many years ago at George Mason University. And Carlos, you know this as well as any person that's even played 5 minutes of rugby. You have to wrap when you tackle. You can't go head first. You have to wrap them up. You're taught to wrap at their thighs or at their hip, maybe even below that. And there's very little concussion issues, at least, in comparison. Yeah. And here's the thing is, if in rugby, if you get, just like in soccer, Carlos, if you get one too many yellow cards, or in particular, if it's egregious, you can just be removed from the game. The difference, though, in soccer and rugby, which is one of the reasons I respect those two sports to a greater degree, is once you're removed, there's no replacement of you. It's a true downturn to the team that has that player removed. There's more pressure on people to live up to the standards of the game and play by the rules of the game. In the NFL, Carlos, if somebody gets removed from the game, all they do is bring in their second string guy who was an All-American for 3 years at his college. In other words, they just replace one great player with another. It doesn't really penalize what they're trying to do, and that is stop this particular behavior. And the question is, when, Roger Goodell, when NFL, when NCAA, are you going to start making a rule that you must wrap ball carrier?
And one of the debates I had that almost brought up the miss of the week was Dante's Perfect.
Oh, yes.
Which, I don't know if you've seen his hits over the seasons, but he ejected from the team and fined. He's gone for the season.
That's right.
And the coach is, not happy with that. But if you see his hits, they were egregious.
Oh, yeah.
And he should have been tossed out after one of those hits. I don't know how many other weeks ago. But
did you see Carlos as he was running off the field? And he knew that not only he's out of the game, but he was probably going to be actually he didn't know. But he didn't know he was going to be removed from the team for the rest of the year. But did you see the clip of him running off the field?
Yes.
He was smiling.
He was smiling, and he was waving to the fans or blowing kisses to them.
I know. I laugh, but it's silly, right? It's a lack of respect. And our Catholic quote of the week at the very end is from JP2, where he talks about respect and responsibility on the part of the athlete. And I'm going to bring this very thing back up. But
let me interject one quick thing about the concussions.
Go ahead.
Youth sports, soccer happens to have an inordinate amount of concussions to young people, and they didn't know it at the time. But I remember coaching. It is the ball when kids go for headers will concuss kids, and they never realized it before. And now it's become so prominent, thank goodness. But they don't allow young kids up to a certain age not to hit headers at practice. In games, I think it's it just happens. But that's a big deal now, and it's very important to health.
Oh, absolutely. No, in fact, I think this is not only just an ethical issue, I think this borders on a moral issue that the administrators, the referees, the people, who run these organizations, especially at the highest level, it needs to bleed on down from there. But let me ask you this. Think about it. Heading is one of the long-standing plays of the game. It's a way that players can score a goal and also redirect a ball. Because I see an easy answer in the tackling thing, as I mentioned, but how do you correct it? Could you take it out completely?
I mean, I know a kid who was out probably 3 months, and he couldn't go to school because he was the glare in the lights, and it was from heading or getting the ball kicked in the air that went off his head, right, which happens as well. It's not just an intentional header. It's sometimes a ricochet off somebody's kick, and I don't know how you change it. I think you do what they're doing now, which is as you're younger, you probably take that out and don't really teach that until you get later because, damage at a younger age, it probably has more of an impact than when you get older.
Yeah, and I know that it's happening more to girls and women because even though the ball's coming at the same pace and the ball's the same size and it's inflated to the same pounds and pressure and so forth, but their neck muscles are weaker, and they found out that leads to more concussions.
Yes.
Carlos, listen, thank you for joining us for this week's Hit and Miss.
My pleasure. Love to join you anytime, John.
I appreciate it, and we'll talk soon either way.
Have a great week.
Thank you, Carlos.
Bye.
Folks, that was Carlos Herrera, our certified soccer coach and our soccer analyst. He joins us just about every week to do our hit and miss or to have some form of conversation. You're listening to Faith in Sport, folks. I'm Dr. John Acquaviva. There's a couple ways to listen to us, not only on AM 1270, but of course you can tap into the app, which is the Carolina Catholic Radio Network app, and just tap on Listen Live, and you're tapped right into the show. Or you can just go to carolinacatholicradio.org and do the same thing. Just tap on Listen Live, and you've joined us for the show. Listen, in a couple minutes, in fact, in 1 minute, we're going to bring on our college football analyst, Tommy Fee. But before we bring him on, if you have a question for Tommy, you have a question for me, or a comment about the show, or a question directly for me, a couple ways that you can get in touch with me. My Twitter account is j.acquaviva1. That's ACQUAVIVA 1, the number 1, j.acquaviva1. Or you can email me at faithandsport@wingate.edu. So it's faith and A-N-D, faithandsport@wingate.edu. Folks, thank you for joining us today. One of the things that we like to do on this show is we want to talk X's and O's. We want to talk about regular stories going on in the world of sport. But we also want to weave in character, ethics, and morality into our conversation. So it kind of fits with the mission of Carolina Catholic Radio, but Catholic radio and Christian radio in general, because we would be defunct. We would be amiss if we didn't bring that up every once in a while. And I try my best, and I try to bring on guests that can talk about that at least on a regular basis, as we were just talking about with Carlos Herrera and the issue of concussions, that this is an obligation that the NFL has and the NCAA has in particular. And they've taken some steps in trying to determine, what impact the helmet has and what impact some other aspects of the equipment have on creating concussions. But the problem is that there's no rules when it comes to tackling. There's very few rules when it comes to tackling. And that was one of the things that Carlos and I were talking about, that the NCAA and the NFL in particular has to take a look at that, because once they start going down that path of having these guys tackle with what's called a form tackle, where their arms go around like as if they're hugging a tree, then the overall injuries are going to go down, and certainly the concussion rate is going to go down. Anybody that's listening to the show, anybody that's a fan of the NFL, knows that this is an issue that's talked about not only a lot, but way too often. And this needs to be addressed, and I'm just wondering when they're actually going to do that. We're going to talk some college football with Tommy Fee. We had some technical difficulties. He's going to call back into the show. We might have lost him. So Chris is going to indicate to me when Tommy's on the line. I think that's him calling in right now. A couple things from this past weekend in the world of sport that I wanted to share with you folks is that Carlos mentioned a whole lot's going on in the world of sport. In fact, to me, there are 4 or 5 times of the year that are more exciting than others, and this is one of them. College football's in full swing. NFL football's in full swing. College in pro baseball is in playoffs, which is the most exciting part of the baseball calendar. And hockey just started this past week, so we got all 4 of those major sports going on. The NBA is in preseason, and I think it's just a terrific time of year. By the way, the other times of year that I find the most exciting, or as exciting as this for different reasons, is near the holidays when all those bowl games are on. I think it's terrific just about every day, and of course it's a dream for the football fan. On the weekends we have the NFL, but during the week, even on like a Monday to Tuesday, we have all these bowl games, and on some occasions there's as many as like 2 or 3 bowl games a day. And of course on New Year's Day, the day before New Year's and so forth, there's as many as like 5 or 6 on. Those are 2 times a year. The other time of year, I love 2 things in the spring. I love the basketball tournament. The NCAA tournament at college. I'm not a particularly really big basketball fan, but I particularly love that tournament. I think I'm like most other people. I'll go online and ESPN and CBS Sports and fill out the bracket. I know a lot of you folks do that. You either do that with friends, a group of friends, or something like at work that somebody organizes. And of course, there's all kinds of websites that offer that as well. But it's just exciting because so many of those games go down to the wire. It's just really exciting. And especially if you like college basketball, it's just game after game on those select days that the tournament runs. So those are 3 times: the fall with baseball and football going on at the same time, the winter when the bowl games are going on, and then in the spring there's 2 things. One is the tournament, and the other one is the Masters. I'm not a particularly huge golf fan, but I love the Masters. I think it's a special time of year. I think it's a special tournament. I think it's a special golf course, and I particularly love that. So that just giving some insight on what I mentioned earlier. You're listening to Faith in Sport. I'm Dr. John Acquaviva. This is Carolina Catholic Radio. One thing I want to mention is in 2 weeks, Tim Singleton, he's a colleague of mine at Wingate University, and he's the director of sports medicine. And then this has to do with our aforementioned discussion on concussions. He's got a master's degree in athletic training, and he's the head of the entire athletic training program at Wingate University. In other words, he oversees all of the athletic trainers who take care of the injuries for all of our athletes at Wingate University. This is common on any college campus. Usually there is an athletic director or an athletic trainer at each and every high school throughout the country. And, of course, pro teams have several of them. But he's going to be on the show, and we're going to talk about some basic things that you hear about sports injuries, and he'll just put them in terms that you can understand it a little better. And especially if you're a sports fan, I think you'll appreciate that conversation. But one of the things I'd like you folks to do is mark down the date 2 weeks from today. So let's see. Today is the 7th, so it's going to be the 21st of October. He's going to join us on the show. And I'd particularly like for you to write that down and jot down any question you have about an injury or in particular a sports injury that you would like to address on the air, or you can just leave it at my email address, faithandsport@wingate.edu. And you can just, I can ask the question that you email or tweet, or you can just call into the show and you can talk to Tim directly. He'll join us, and that's in 2 weeks. So I just wanted to let you folks know about that because it's a unique guest, and I know a lot of people, they hear about these injuries. They follow what's called the bottom line, like people that watch ESPN and ABC Sports and so forth. There's like a ticker going across the bottom of the screen, and they address all kinds of sports, right? They'll give scores and stats and so forth. And one of the things that they'll always do is they'll give an injury update on so many athletes in so many different sports. And then sometimes they're acronyms or they're abbreviated, the injury. And a lot of people hear them, but they don't really know what that means. And that's one of the reasons I'm going to have Tim Singleton on. So remember, that's in 2 weeks. Right now, as Carlos and I mentioned, in the world of baseball, let's give a live update. The Tampa Bay Rays are up on the Houston Astros 3-1, but the Astros are up 2-0. In fact, these series that are going on right now is just best of 5. So the first team to win 3 games, they move on to the championship series. So the two in the National League are the Nats and the Dodgers. They play later on. The Cards and the Braves, they play this little later on this afternoon. And the American League, it's Minnesota and New York. New York's up 2-0. And then, as I mentioned, the Astros and the Rays are going on right now. In fact, if the Astros, the Yankees, the Dodgers, and the Braves win, they all move on to the championship series. So all of those series can actually end today. But as we were talking, we certainly don't want the Nats because Carlos is a fan, I'm a fan, and Chris is a big Braves fan, so he's hoping that the Braves win today so they just go on to the championship series in the National League. Right. Yeah. Are you going to be watching today later?
Yes, I will be.
Attaboy. All right, so that's what's going on in the world of baseball. I think this is a great time of year, as I mentioned. I just love it that virtually every day baseball's on. The only day that they try not to do it is on Sunday afternoon, so it just conflicts with too much of the interest in the NFL. College football, Week 6 just completed. A few of the top teams tumbled. Auburn came down. They were undefeated. They lost to University of Florida. Iowa, Michigan played. That was the other top 25 matchup. U of M came out on top. Nobody was really impressed with that victory. Michigan won 10-3. But there was what I think one of the most interesting story is the University of Florida. They started around 20th in the nation, and they have won a couple tough games. But what a stretch they're going through right now. University of Florida just played Auburn, who's in the top 15. But in the next 2 of 3 weeks, they play LSU, and then they play University of Georgia. Man, that's going to be quite a test for them. But we'll see how they do. Well, let's do this. Let's take a pause here in our weekend headlines. Tommy Fee's on the line, correct?
Yes, he is.
Okay. And and perfect. We're talking about college football here in the weekend headlines, Tommy. Tommy Fee, welcome to the show. Let's talk some college football.
Hey, Dr. John, great to be back on the show.
This is great. I know. In fact, you're saying back on the show.
A while.
Oh, yeah, it's been a while, but you were on, and I'd mentioned this to our listeners, Tommy, that I used to be on Radio Maria. That was a national affiliate in about 12 different cities, I think 13 at the end, and you were our college football analyst there, too, and you were on, I think it was probably about 2 years ago, but yeah, welcome back to the show. Let's talk some college football. So let's do this. Tommy, what's your takeaway from this past 6 weeks? Like, has anybody really disappointed you? Has anybody really surprised you? Just give me your Tommy Fee's take on this.
Well, love college football. Of course, you got so many different scenarios working. You got to go with the big boys, Alabama, Clemson. Clemson hasn't really impressed.
No.
They had the real tough game at North Carolina.
That's right.
And, if North Carolina gets the 2-pointer, who knows? I mean, you'd probably have Clemson going down, kicking a field goal, but you never know. They kind of struggled with some other teams that you thought that they would, take care of business. I really don't like, these big teams, Alabama, Clemson. They don't play anyone, for a while, and then you start getting into the game. So, of course, they're up there. They crush teams or they have trouble. So it's tough to figure them out or find out. Of course, they're going to be up there. They're good. Georgia, for some reason, I don't think Georgia's as good as they were in the past couple of years. But, you've got Fromm at quarterback. And, he just gets the job done. I thought Notre Dame played them tough.
I did, yeah. I agree.
Now that's going to be tough for Notre Dame. They're an independent. They get one loss.
That's right.
They could still get in there. I would say right now, Ohio State, to me, looks pretty darn good.
Oh, yeah.
And that game this past Saturday, Michigan State's no pushover. They're a good team.
That's right.
They've got a good defense.
Yep.
And that game started out like, oh, wow, okay, we got a game. And then Ohio State just, they just kept going and they took it to them. And surprisingly for the sports bettors out there, the spread was 20. Ohio State giving 20 points. They covered that, which you would never think they would have. But that's how those games go. LSU now, they look real tough. That quarterback looks really good. I don't know if you saw that Texas game earlier in the year, which I thought was a real good game. And I think Texas is good, too. So we got we got a great game coming up here next week. Oklahoma and Texas, the Red River shootout. I think that's going to be a really interesting game. Now, Jalen Hurts, quarterback's got something to prove.
That's right.
So that's going to be dangerous. I like Texas. I know they have the loss to LSU, but I like Ellinger at the quarterback.
Yep.
I don't know if they're there yet. Their defense is right around there. They played LSU really tough. It was back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
LSU got them.
Yep.
So that's kind of my Florida. I heard you talking about Florida. Yeah, what a game. They beat Auburn. I'm not convinced on Nick at the quarterback at Auburn. I think Auburn's always going to be tough. Gus Malzone.
What's your prediction? What's your prediction? LSU, number 5, goes into the swamp again. And I should say they're home again, and so they're
they're at home.
Yeah. What's your prediction on the LSU-Florida game?
I'd have to go with LSU. I just said Florida had the biggest win of their, in recent memory. That's a huge game to beat Auburn.
Yep.
Great game. The quarterback gets dinged up. It looks like he's going out. He comes back. I think his name is Trask. There's a gamer, if you will, But I just think LSU, down in LSU, I think they're going to be ready for him, and I think it'd be too much for Florida. Florida has a good defense.
Yep.
But I think this quarterback is something special, and they really got LSU's really, they're really doing well on the offensive side, and their defense is tough. I don't know if it's as good as Florida's. It's another huge game for Florida. I mean, like you were saying, what a schedule.
That's right.
I
know, Tommy.
So I like LSU in there. I think LSU takes it. By the way, for the bettors, the spread is 12.5. Jeez. Yeah. I wouldn't bet it, but I think LSU's going to win.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I'm not saying that I bet.
Tommy, if a couple people this past weekend, like Kirk Herbstreit among them, he said, he's kind of back on the Clemson bandwagon, but he mentioned earlier, about a week ago now, and of course part of it was coming off the game against North Carolina and so forth, but he said if he had to choose right now between those undefeated teams and even maybe a one-loss team like Notre Dame and so forth, not that he had them in the top 4, but he said he would have kept Clemson out. And let me ask you this. Earlier this year, Desmond Howard of ESPN Game Day said one of the two, Clemson or Alabama, will not be in the final game. And, of course, the reason that's such a big statement is that the last 3 years, those two teams have played in the final game to win the championship. Clemson won the last 2 3 years ago. Alabama won that one.
Sure.
Do you agree with that? That you can easily see either Clemson or Alabama, or maybe neither one of those teams in the final game this year.
Yeah. I mean, that's a tough one. I wouldn't say I could easily see that.
Yeah.
Because, they've got the teams, and they, when the big games come, they're going to be there. I could see one of them or maybe both losing a game during the season.
Huh.
And, Alabama's got the Iron Bowl. I mean,
that's right.
Auburn could get them. Clemson doesn't look that good, but you know how those things go.
Yep.
It's almost like, in the NFL, the Patriots.
That's right.
They look like they're bored.
Yeah.
Like some teams it's just like, who do we got? Buffalo. Oh, okay. Buffalo plays them tough, but, it's just you know what I mean? They get up for the big games. I'm assuming they both have great coaches.
Yep.
Dabo, Sweeney, and, Nick Saban. But it's hard to say if they're going to be out of those games, or out of the playoffs. I would like to see it personally, but that's a tough one.
You don't mind you wouldn't mind seeing it again as long as they're the two best teams. You wouldn't mind seeing that again for the fourth straight year.
No, I would be rooting against that. But if they deserve to be there, then yeah. I don't want to see that. I like the underdogs and I like parity and all that. But
sure.
It's just that's the way it's been going. And if they have an early loss, as we've seen in the past, Alabama can still get in there, right?
Of course,
so really, even if these two teams get a loss, they're probably still gonna, get in there, I would say. So that's a tough one to say, hey, one of these teams isn't going to be in there. That could be true, but the way things are and the way the voting goes and all that, I could see them getting in, even with a loss. But, that's going to be tough, too, because if you have, Ohio State could be undefeated, LSU could be undefeated, Oklahoma, I think Texas, honestly, is going to give Oklahoma a game.
Tommy, going down a different lane. We just got a question via email, and the listener asked the following question: considering the number of flags that get thrown during an NFL game. Now, we're switching gears here from the NCAA to the NFL, but, of course, a lot are thrown in the NCAA as well. Specifically, the stress and anxiety it causes the television viewer. You think you witnessed a big play, and then here comes that little yellow flag from the upper right-hand corner of the TV screen. Do you think that it seems to me, and I don't think this is a big surprise, but I'd like to see the stat. Are there more flags now than there ever been in the game of football?
I completely agree with the viewer who wrote in. That's what I definitely feel. I think that the NFL has to have a conference tomorrow and get the refs together and say you can't throw a flag on every play.
That's right.
Especially it seems.
That's right.
Third and long. It's become kind of ridiculous. I guess the old saying goes, you could call holding on every play.
That's right.
I don't know if you saw the hands to the helmet in the Green Bay Dallas game.
Yep.
Roughing the quarterback. The guy kind of, what are they, stop playing the game if you can't do that. It's getting crazy.
No,
I agree with that listener. That's a great insight.
No, I agree as well. In fact, one of the things that happened in the offseason, a lot of people know, is prior to last year, you could not review pass interference calls in one play, albeit a big one. But it wasn't the Super Bowl. It was in the NFC Championship game between the Rams and the New Orleans Saints. The New Orleans Saints had a chance, right? They're driving. They're within the 20-yard line. It was obviously pass interference. But, Tommy, it was one play, and that one play caused the NFL to change a rule to you can review pass interference.
Yeah.
That is, and the interesting thing is in baseball and in basketball, and in football, in fact, any of the major sports, they want to cut down on how much time each game is so they can get to the next game and there's a flow to it and they keep the viewer entertained and engaged and so forth. All stuff like this is going to do is prolong the game in a stressful and anxiety-ridden manner.
Yeah. I agree with you 100%. It's gone away from the love of the game. Baseball is now reviewing things. I mean, you just have to live with the calls. I don't know. It's part of the game, I guess, as the old saying would go. But yeah, it's like you can't get everything right. I mean, and it does. You're right. It just it obstructs the flow of the game.
Oh yeah, the absolute and the enjoyment
Stop and start.
Absolutely, the enjoyment of the viewer. Not to mention people who have a wager on the game, right, Tommy? But
of course.
But Tommy, here's one of my things about baseball, but especially about football, both in the NCAA level and in the NFL, is the whole reason that you review a play is so you get it right. And Tommy, how many times I was watching a game yesterday, I was watching a game on Saturday, I was watching games last week. It happens if you watch football for more than 15 minutes, you're going to see the following. There's a catch made or a catch not made. The ruling on the field is given, and then they show it, and you're like, the guy caught it, right? And then the commentator, the color commentator goes, I think he caught it. And then the play-by-play guy goes, it looks pretty clear he caught it, right? They're showing a replay in 5 different angles from 5 different slow-motion views. And then after they review, they go, after further review, we're gonna reverse the call and say he didn't catch it. And I just go, what are you watching?
Yeah. And because the hands exactly under the ball, or did the ground help? You can't do that on every play. It's like, hey, what is the rule? What do they have a conference and go? Now look, his hands are kind of so that's a good one. Oh, okay, got it. Let's go out. Let's review everything. Okay, well, why would I don't want to go to watch review. I want to go to watch athletes do amazing things, but that we live in a time of getting everything. Oh, no one can be
That's right.
Live in that. We got to get everything right.
That's right. And I know the corker is they're not getting it right. But further, remember it was 2 years ago, Tommy, or about this. Folks, by the way, I'm Dr. John Acquaviva. You're listening to Faith in Sport. We're talking with Faith in Sports college football analyst Tommy Fee. Thank you for joining us here on Carolina Catholic Radio today. We're talking about college football and pro football, and in particular, just how frustrating it is sometimes to watch a game and the flow of the game is destroyed by some of the referees and their calls. But remember, Tommy, 2 years ago, or about 2 years ago, I remember the NFL said in a kind of an unofficial statement, they said, and I think they just released this for the viewer, basically, and they said, listen, if the call is made, even if it kind of looks like the opposite occurred, we're just going to stick with the call just to kind of keep the flow of the game going. But, Tommy, how many times they reverse the call and they get it wrong is astounding.
It's astounding. Exactly. Like I said, they need to have a conference like today.
Oh, yeah,
say,
absolutely.
Hey, what's going on here? This is getting out of control. In fact, I heard on one of I think it was the refereeing crew of the Green Bay Dallas game, they said, oh, this crew throws the most flags. They said that on the radio, on the TV. So you're sitting there going, really? And then just flags come out. Okay, I guess they are. Wow.
Tommy,
ruin the game, guys.
In a couple of years, they're going to create this kind of like, through some type of technology and some incredible television that you're going to have to buy for $1,000. But what the way that they're going to get people to stop doing it is that sometimes when the flags are thrown, it's going to come through the TV and hit the viewer in the head. And then, maybe
that's probably right.
And maybe at that point, the NFL will go, think we're throwing too many flags, and the viewer with the black eye is going to go, yep. Too many flags.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, no, it's too bad, but it's where we're at. And they've changed a lot of the rules, leading with the helmet to the head.
Yep.
I mean, I understand that, and hey, if a guy is trying to knock someone out, or it's got to be egregious to me. But when you get these, like you said, I mean, it just disrupts the flow of the game. The one guy for the Oakland, he had multiple penalties on him, and they suspended him for the year.
Vontez Vontez Perfect, yeah.
Yeah. Now, that I can see that. That guy is,
he's a problem.
He's in trouble. Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's out to hurt. I mean, I truly believe he's he's not good for the game. And look, they suspended him for the season.
Tommy, did you see? I asked Carlos this in the first chat we had in the beginning of the show. Did you see Burfict when he was running off the field with his helmet off after he had been removed from the game?
I did not see that.
He was basically laughing, and he was waving at the fans, and I think he was giving thumbs up or something like that. The only thing he didn't do was he didn't run through the park like George Costanza with his hands, flipping in the
Right, everything's fine. It's a beautiful day.
All right, Tommy, I'm going to leave you with this, right? You're going to have 2 seconds on each of these games. You're going to tell me who's going to win the game, okay? We're going back to college football, and most of these are going to be ranked opponents against other ranked opponents. You ready?
I am. Now, this is just to win outright.
Just to win outright. That's right, not the spread. Just win outright. Virginia at Miami.
I like Virginia. Miami's no good this year.
Number 10. Number 10.
Right out.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. Number 10, Penn State at 17, Iowa.
I think Iowa gets it done. I don't think Penn State, they haven't really, they struggled against Pittsburgh.
Yep.
Iowa just lost a tough one to Michigan, but I think Iowa takes that.
And they're incredibly tough at home, usually.
Yes, yeah.
And Oklahoma, number 6 at number 11, Texas. You said you like Texas, correct?
I love the game. Yep, I love Texas.
Just to win outright?
Yep.
Okay.
That's their, you mentioned the dark horse. They're my dark horse, Texas.
I love it. Okay.
I really like them.
And you said LSU in Florida. You like LSU over Florida, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And Alabama at number 24, Texas A&M.
I think Alabama crushes them.
What's the spread in that game? Do you know?
You know what? I didn't even look. Texas A&M, and I think they're in the top 25 still. And
they're number 24, yeah.
Yeah, they're number 24. I mean,
You think it's overrated. But they have played, they've lost against 2 tough opponents. And
yeah, they did. They lost against Auburn and,
I forgot who they lost to as well.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, well, I'll check that out, and then I'll let the viewers know, and I'll text you too. Well, listen, buddy, I'm going to let you go on to your next thing. I'm sure the 3 guys are sitting at the tee box looking at you going, come on, you said 15 minutes.
Exactly. I wish it was that. I'm walking into a dentist. I'm walking to a dentist chair, and everyone knows that's lovely.
Hey, Ted, ask the dentist. This way you know that he's a real good dentist. Say, Texas A&M had 2 losses this year. What are the 2 losses that they
Absolutely, John. Hey, you sound great, man. It's great to be back on the show.
Thank you. Hey, thank you for coming on the show. Good luck with the dentist. And listen, we'll talk soon.
Okay.
Take care, Tommy.
Take care.
All right, folks, you're listening to Faith in Sport. I'm Dr. John Acquaviva. We just got had a fun chat with Tommy Fee.
I'm glad we were finally able to get him on the show.
I know, man, that was a big deal. But the good thing was it allowed us to get to some of the weekend headlines. Yeah. And he loves to talk college football and actually all things football. So thanks, Dan, for coming on the show. And I just love his insight, and I love his humor and so forth. Let's do this, Chris. Let's shift our gears to the quick Q&A with Dr. A. Okay. You got a couple questions for me? Why don't you just give them one at a time, and then we'll see where the time takes us.
Okay. The first question is, last week, California's governor signed the Fair Pay to Play Act. And what does this mean to the college sport landscape?
Not much right now. And the reason I say that in particular is because this act, right, this bill that was signed doesn't come into play until 2023. So it's going to be another 4 years from now. But let me give some background information on this for those who aren't familiar. California state legislators passed a bill last month to allow athletes at state schools. So, for instance, there's numerous schools out there, but the big ones would be Stanford, UCLA, Southern California, and so forth, to accept endorsements and to retain an agent. The governor signed it into action just last week, and that's why this is such a big deal. But there's still several problems with this. One, and the main one is the NCAA has not okayed this. So the NCAA oversees all of those schools. If they want to be student athletes and play within, for instance, the Big 12, which most of those institutions belong to, it's overseen by and regulated by the NCAA. Mm-hmm. So they have to get permission from the NCAA to do it. The NCAA not only has not given them permission, it looks like they will not give them permission to do this. And so people are thinking this. They think those schools are going to go rogue and kind of play their own schedule. But the problem is they're going to have to play their own schedule in the state of California. And after, what are they going to do? Play each team 2 or 3 times a year like it's a high school football league? Or like it's basketball or something, or some type of, amateur hockey league? And so this is one of the problems. But the other problem still is in this. This is always the bottom line. Once you start paying these athletes for whatever, endorsements, their likeness, doing commercials, whatever the case is, then they become professionals. And this is exactly what the NCAA wants to avoid. And here's the bottom line. And this is something that confuses me and frustrates me to a great degree. And that is education worth something or not? Mm-hmm. These athletes, both the guys and girls, sometimes it's much as literally $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 a year on a full scholarship. And their institution that institution is paying for all of their fees, their room and board, their food, and so forth. And it's costing $50,000 to $75,000 a year at some schools. At the least, it's probably $30,000 a year, maybe 20 and 25 at some of the smaller schools and so forth. But there's no appreciation for that. There's no appreciation for that price tag. Somebody's giving you $100,000 for 4 years to go to school. $200,000 is, in some cases, they just don't appreciate that. They're like, no, we don't really care about that. We just want money. Right. And the NCAA has a hard time with this because the whole thing that they want to oversee is the true student athlete. They want to see these students go through school. They want to see that is appreciated and respected. And ultimately, that's not respected. They're just like, let us make as much money as we can. We'll talk more about this in a future show. Okay. Question 2.
Question 2 has to do with the MLB. The Texas Rangers' Mike Minor asked his teammate to not record an out. What's with that?
Yeah, this is Chris. Did you hear about this, by the way?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is in the last week of the season. I think it was about 2 or 3 days before the season ends. So about 10 days ago. This question was meant for last week, but we had some computer issues last week, and so everybody heard a recorded version of this show last Monday. But it's still worth talking about because it's an ethical issue. And some background. Mike Minor has been pitching in the major leagues for over 10 years now. He's never recorded 200 strikeouts. And 200 strikeouts is kind of like 20 wins. It's a really good standard to get to. Not too many pitchers get to that. It's not overly outstanding. Like, for instance, Garrett Cole struck out 300 people this year. So 100 more people than this. But what does this mean? What does a record mean, though, if it's manufactured? And here's what happened. I think there was 1 out or 2 outs in the 9th inning, and Mike Minor's pitching. He has 199 strikeouts, and there's a pop-up to the first baseman, but it's in foul ground. And you could see it on the tape. The first baseman comes over. Mike Minor's running toward him. The player has stopped. He's just standing in the batter's box because it's clear it's going to go foul. And as Minor is approaching the first baseman, he literally yells at him, "Let it go! Let it go!" And the first baseman, confused, goes, there must be a reason for him saying this because he's the pitcher, right? Pitcher, more than anybody, wants the out to be gotten. He lets the ball drop in foul ground. Mike Minor proceeds to strike that guy out to reach 200 strikeouts. And I asked a bunch of people, including Carlos, and I was listening to people on ESPN and other sports radio outlets and sports TV, and almost nobody had a problem with it. And I thought it was weird. I thought it was strange. I thought it was completely out of the ordinary for this reason alone. If records are manufactured in any way, what's the purpose of a record?
Yeah.
The whole thing about a record is that there is competition, there's true competition, and it's earned in, for lack of a better word, a fair way. Instead, he gets this guy to pop out. He tells the first baseman to drop the ball so he can record an out another way. And I just go, well, somebody could get 300 strikeouts a year if they wanted to that way. Hey, drop the ball. Let me try to strike this guy out. Really confused me.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering why doesn't this bother more people? And even Carlos goes, I don't have a problem with that. But let me tell you a story. Happened a couple years ago, and this was the most egregious instance of a record being broken. And you might remember this. It's about 6 or 7 years ago. I think it was Division II women's basketball. Tell me if you've heard of this before. This was probably a forgotten story. This gal that was playing basketball was 1 point away from the all-time being a scoring leader in Division II. and I might have the division wrong, but it was college basketball. And I remember it being fairly small, so I'm pretty sure it wasn't Division I. It was Division II or Division III. She was 1 point away, Chris. She was a senior. With a few games left in her senior year, she tore her ACL. So she's out for the year, right? Mm-hmm. She was 1 point away. You know, it was like 2,458 points, whatever it was. But she's 1 point away from tying 2 points away. One bucket, right? One layup, one shot from the, from the top of the key, whatever, to go ahead all time. And they asked the girl who held the record and say, would you be okay with us manufacturing a layup that would count in the game? So get this, what the team did. The girl, with her brace on, was standing underneath the basket. There was a tip-off at midcourt. The referee threw the ball. The game actually started, but they had a deal, did this team that had this gal with the hurt player, had to deal with the opposing team. Do not defend the tip-off. They tapped it to one of her teammates. The teammate threw it to their teammate underneath the basket with her knee brace on, lays the ball up and in to go ahead officially to be the all-time leading scorer in Division II. It was so weird. And further, the girl that had held the record okayed this. And everybody thought that it was a good idea because the girl okayed it. Right? In other words, well, she okayed it. It must be an okay thing to do. And I just go, that's not how you score points. No. It's supposed to be contested. Yeah. There's supposed to be a defense. That's the whole reason getting a point, getting a home run, getting a strikeout, getting whatever, shooting the puck in the goal. It doesn't matter what the feed is. The reason it's special is that because the person is trying to keep you from doing that.
Right.
And in this particular case, the girl that held the record goes, it's fine. And I thought it was the strangest thing. Now, is this a moral issue? No, of course not. But this is ethical, right? It's clearly created an unfair, field or an unfair situation for the people that have tried their hearts out to get as many points or as many strikeouts, as many home runs as they can get. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I can't think of a...
Yeah, I mean, you're supposed to earn the record. I mean, you get a record like that, you're supposed to earn it.
That's right. And it wasn't earned at all. In fact, if I remember correctly, she might have even been in her street clothes. I'm not exaggerating, Chris. She's standing underneath the basket in her street clothes. They do this fake tip-off. The other team is just standing there looking silly. And the clock clock starts, and everything. And they go up 2-0. It was the weirdest thing, brother.
That's like... if an NFL player was to get the record for the most touchdowns, they say, don't tackle him. Let him go ahead and run it into the end zone. Don't tackle him.
There's countless amount of there's literally a countless amount of situations you could bring because it could be everything from winning a game to breaking a record. But again, if the record's going to mean something, then let the record mean something.
Right.
Back to the Mike Minor situation, it's quite possible he had a incentive in his contract. If he gets 200 Ks for the year, he might get an additional $250,000. I mean, those guys make so much money anyway, but it's quite possible. A lot of them have incentives. Win this many games, have this many strikeouts, whatever the case is. And I'm wondering if that's what it was. But if I'm the owner, boy, I might go to court on that one.
Yeah.
He truly manufactured that strikeout where the guy easily could have caught it.
Right.
Anyway. All right, folks, listen, you're listening to Faith in Sport. I'm Dr. John Acquaviva. You hear the voice of our producer, Chris Pressler. This is Carolina Catholic Radio. Remember, pass this show along to friends, especially if they're sports fans. Again, you can tell them they can listen AM 1270 on the Carolina Catholic Radio Network app. All you do is hit listen live, and you can also hit listen live on CarolinaCatholicRadio.org on our website.
That's right. We also have some more encore times. You can hear an encore presentation of Faith in Sport.
Tell us about those, Chris.
Including tonight at 10 o'clock. You can hear an encore presentation of this show from 10 to 11 on Carolina Catholic Radio. Also, Tuesday nights from 8 to 9. And Wednesday nights from 10 until 11. So that's 3 new times that you can hear an encore presentation of Faith in Sport, in addition to our weekend encore times, which are Saturday afternoons from 4 to 5 p.m. and Sunday afternoons from 2 to 3. So you got plenty of opportunities to hear Faith in Sport and not to miss it.
That's right. Thank you, Chris. All right, listen, let's end with this. Our Catholic quote of the week. It comes from JP2. By the way, I already mentioned that a couple times that I'd be bringing a quote from JP2. But don't forget, folks, to visit brandrpm.com. Brand RPM, from pens to polos right here in Charlotte. Swag up at brandrpm.com. Here's our Catholic quote of the week, and I'll just give a little bit.
If you want to have some swag like
right.
John.
That's right. In fact, speaking of swag, we're going to give away 2 T-shirts next week, so
that's right.
Everybody get ready, right?
That's right. You can share some of John's swag.
That's right. In fact, we have a golf shirt, a tennis shirt, and I think maybe a football shirt to give away next week, so it'll be really neat.
Yeah.
All right, so this is what JP2 said. Sports contribute to the love of life. It teaches sacrifice, but also teaches respect and responsibility, leading to the full development of every human person. And the term that I want to focus on is respect. And a couple years ago, a researcher said that respect is actually a part of a moral characteristic that's involved in sport. We have all these characteristics that are directly involved in sport that coaches teach, that parents want to see displayed and so forth. And respect is one of them. And I just want to make a point just here in the next minute of how an athlete can show respect. One, you can accept the referee's decision. It's maddening, like Tommy and I were talking about. They make mistakes all the time, but they're imperfect people, just as we're imperfect people. Respect their decision. Also, accept the coach's decision. Coaches say, you're not playing today. You're only going to play in the 9th inning. You're only going to play in the 4th quarter. You're only going to play the first half. We're going to run this play. We're going to run that play. Whatever the case is, respect their decision. The other one is accept and play by the rules on and off the field. In other words, don't do anything illegal. Sometimes people take performance enhancement drugs like anabolic steroids, and one of the things that they justified is, I think other people are taking it too. But the fact is, it's illegal. It's illegal for a reason. That's a topic for another time. But the fact is that this is one of the ways you show respect for your teammate or your opponent. If you're getting bigger, stronger, and faster as a result of something illegal, that sounds like that's putting it on an unfair playing field. So JP2 was onto something here when he said, make sure that you have respect as well as being responsible. So, hey, thank you to Brand RPM, the folks there, for being the sponsor, in particular for the Catholic Quote or Cathlete of the Week. Are you ready to swag up? Let Brand RPM outfit your company. Check them out online at brandrpm.com. Pope Francis said this: in sport, as in life, competing for the result is important, but playing well and fairly is even more important. And before we go, I want to say a special thank you to Chris Pressler, our producer of Keeping Things Moving, to Carlos Herrera, who did our hit and miss with us today, and our college football analyst, Tommy Fee, for joining me on the phone joining me on the show today. I'm Dr. John Acquaviva. Please join us next time here on Carolina Catholic Radio for Faith in Sport.
That's right. You've been listening to Faith in Sport on the Carolina Catholic Radio Network, AM 1270 WCGC. We're also streaming live at carolinacatholicradio.org and the Carolina Catholic Radio app. And make sure you tune in for an encore presentation of Faith in Sport on one of the times that we mentioned earlier here on Faith in Sport. And make sure you tune in again next Monday afternoon from 2 to 3 for Faith in Sport Live with your host, Dr. John Acquaviva, and myself here on the Carolina Catholic Radio Network. Thanks for tuning in.
We hope you enjoyed the program and will join us back for another show on WCAT Radio. This is Sebastian Mahfood. Good day.